September 1944. France was falling faster than anyone believed possible. German maps were outdated within hours, and one American general was moving so fast, even his own commanders struggled to keep up. His name was George S. Patton. German intelligence didn't just see an advancing army, they saw a collapse coming. Supply lines were snapping, entire divisions were being bypassed, and suddenly, Berlin realized something terrifying. If Patton wasn't stopped now, the war in the West could end before winter. So Germany made one last, desperate decision. They sent 58 brand-new Panther tanks to stop him. Only 8 would return. Before we begin, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment below where you're watching from. Now, let's uncover how this gamble unfolded. By late August 1944, the breakout from Normandy had transformed the Western Front. What had once been a slow, grinding campaign suddenly turned into movement. Fast, chaotic, unstoppable movement. At the center of it all was Patton's Third Army. Patton didn't fight the way most generals did. He didn't pause to secure every town. He didn't wait for perfect supply conditions. And he didn't waste time trying to overpower strong defenses head-on. Instead, he moved, relentlessly. His armored columns surged forward day and night, often advancing 40 to 50 miles in a single day. A pace that shattered every assumption German planners relied on. To the German army, it felt unreal. Frontline units reported American forces appearing on their flanks without warning. Commanders prepared defenses for attacks that never came, because Patton had already gone around them. This wasn't just military pressure, it was psychological. German officers began reporting something disturbing. They no longer knew where the front line was. Inside German headquarters, reports piled up faster than they could be processed. Messages contradicted each other. Units requested reinforcements that no longer existed. Supply depots were captured before relocation orders even arrived. Patton's forces weren't destroying the German army piece by piece. They were unraveling it. Fuel shortages grew severe. Communications broke down. Entire formations found themselves isolated, not because they were defeated, but because they were simply bypassed. German generals had trained for structured, predictable warfare. Patton offered neither. By early September, Allied forces were approaching Germany's western border far sooner than anyone had anticipated. And that terrified Berlin, because Germany was already bleeding on every front. The Eastern Front was collapsing under Soviet pressure. Italy had turned into a prolonged disaster. Air raids were pounding German cities daily. The Western Front was supposed to hold. It was supposed to buy time. Time for new defenses. Time for reorganizing forces. Time for miracle weapons that leaders still hoped might change the outcome. But Patton threatened all of that. If he reached the German border intact, if he crossed the Siegfried Line, if he broke into the industrial heart of Germany, the war could end far sooner than anyone in Berlin was prepared to accept. Stopping Patton was no longer optional, it was essential. Germany still had one advantage it believed in deeply: its tanks. The Panther tank was everything German engineers were proud of. Powerful gun, strong armor, advanced optics. On paper, it outclassed the American Sherman. German planners were confident of one thing: if they could concentrate enough Panthers in one place, they could smash Patton's spearhead. So a decision was made. A newly formed armored unit, centered around 58 factory-fresh Panthers, was rushed west. These tanks hadn't fought before. They represented Germany's best remaining armored strength. The mission was brutally simple: find Patton's leading units. Hit them hard, stop the advance, whatever the cost. For German commanders, this was a last roll of the dice. They believed that tactical superiority would finally halt operational chaos. They were wrong. German planners assumed Patton would fight the way they expected. They assumed he would slow down, that he would commit his tanks in neat formations, that he would engage Panthers directly, tank against tank. But Patton didn't think like that. To him, tanks weren't dueling weapons. They were tools of movement. And that difference in mindset would decide everything. As the Panther force moved toward the front, confident in its strength, it had no idea what it was about to face. Not a single decisive battle, but a system designed to break it apart. The Panther force reached the front with confidence. These were not worn-down vehicles pulled from retreating units. They were new, straight from German factories, crews trained to believe they were riding the most advanced tanks in Europe. German planners imagined a clean solution. Find Patton's forward elements, strike them hard, slow the advance, and restore control to a collapsing front. On paper, it made sense. In reality, the battlefield Patton had created no longer followed paper logic. The Panther Brigade expected to encounter a clear American front line. Instead, they found movement everywhere. American armored columns appeared on roads, German maps, still labeled secure. Supply convoys were intercepted miles behind what Germany thought was the front line. Radio reports described American units advancing from multiple directions at once. The Panther commanders quickly realized something unsettling. There was no single spearhead to destroy. Patton's advance wasn't a narrow thrust. It was a flood. By the time Panther crews prepared firing positions, American units had already shifted, sometimes completely bypassing them. The Germans were trying to stop a storm by shooting at where it used to be. In controlled conditions, a Panther was deadly. Its gun outranged most American tanks. Its armor was formidable from the front. Its optics were excellent, but battles were no longer controlled. Patton refused to fight where the Germans were strongest. When Panther units attempted to deploy defensively, American forces simply went around them, cutting fuel routes, communications, and retreat paths. Instead of decisive engagements, the Panthers found themselves constantly relocating, short on fuel, unsure where American units actually were, receiving delayed or contradictory orders. Every mile Patton advanced made the Panthers less relevant. American commanders were well aware of the Panther threat, but Patton never ordered his forces to chase German tanks head-on. Instead, he focused on tempo. Sherman units advanced rapidly, supported by artillery, engineers, and air reconnaissance. Infantry secured key road junctions. Bridges were seized before German units could organize defenses. When Panthers did appear, American forces avoided unnecessary tank duels. They blocked roads, forced Panthers into narrow routes, attacked supply trucks instead of tanks. Called in artillery to deny movement, a Panther without fuel wasn't a weapon. It was a steel obstacle. German radio traffic revealed growing frustration. Tank commanders requested updated intelligence that never arrived. Orders changed faster than they could be executed. Reports warned of American breakthroughs that headquarters had already lost track of. Some Panther crews advanced toward objectives that had already fallen. Others waited for orders that never came. And worst of all, the Panthers were scattered. Instead of massing their strength, they were being pulled apart by a battlefield that refused to stay still. Patton wasn't defeating them with firepower. He was defeating them with disorientation. The initial losses weren't dramatic. No massive clashes, no heroic last stands, just Panthers abandoned due to lack of fuel. Others immobilized by mechanical failures during forced redeployments. Some damaged by artillery fire while repositioning. Each loss chipped away at German confidence. Crews began to realize something terrifying. They were reacting, not controlling. And in Patton's war, reaction meant defeat. The Panther was designed for deliberate warfare. Planned battles, prepared defenses, calculated movements. Patton's war allowed none of that. American units moved faster than German command cycles. Decisions were made locally, not waiting for approval. Every pause was temporary. While German commanders debated where to deploy their Panthers, Patton had already changed the situation. By the time Panther units tried to concentrate for a decisive strike, the opportunity was gone. Quietly, a realization spread among German officers. Stopping Patton would require more than superior tanks. It would require time. And time was something Germany no longer had. The Panther force was still dangerous, but it was losing relevance by the hour. And the decisive moment was approaching, a moment where Patton's methods would expose the final weakness of Germany's last gamble. By the time German commanders realized what was happening, the window had already closed. The Panther Brigade was finally ordered to concentrate its remaining strength and strike what intelligence identified as Patton's forward armored elements. This was the moment German planners had been waiting for, a chance to bring their best tanks together, regain initiative, and deliver a decisive blow. But the intelligence was already outdated. Patton's forces had moved again. The Panthers rolled toward what they believed was a vulnerable American formation. Instead of a clear engagement, they found empty roads, abandoned positions, and signs of recent movement. Tire tracks, broken crates, discarded fuel cans. The Americans had been there. They were already gone. And worse, the Panthers had driven straight into a narrowing corridor of American-controlled territory. American reconnaissance units observed the movement immediately. Reports moved fast. Decisions followed even faster. Patton didn't order a counterattack. He ordered containment. American units moved to seal roads, bridges, and crossroads ahead of the Panther columns. Engineers destroyed key crossings. Infantry secured villages that controlled supply routes. Artillery units repositioned to dominate movement corridors rather than target tanks directly. The Panthers were powerful, but they were heavy, fuel-hungry, and dependent on uninterrupted logistics. That dependence became their weakness. Fuel trucks failed to arrive. Ammunition deliveries were delayed or intercepted. Communications broke down as command vehicles struggled to keep pace. Some Panther crews were forced to shut down engines to conserve fuel. Others were ordered to abandon vehicles that could no longer move. The German force wasn't being destroyed. It was being neutralized. This was Patton's battlefield philosophy in action. He did not seek dramatic tank versus tank confrontations. He sought collapse. Instead of striking the fist, he squeezed the arm. American forces avoided Panthers when possible and attacked everything that allowed them to function. Roads, depots, bridges, communications. German tanks sat intact, guns loaded, unable to influence the battle. A weapon that cannot move is no longer a weapon. When contact finally occurred, it was chaotic and brief. A group of Panthers encountered advancing American armor near a vital road junction. The Panthers had superior range and firepower, but the Americans were not interested in a prolonged engagement. They maneuvered aggressively, using terrain, smoke, and supporting fire to disengage and reposition. The Panthers fired. The Americans moved. And within hours, the engagement ended without a decisive result. Except for one crucial outcome. The road junction fell under American control. That single loss fractured German movement across the entire sector. German commanders began issuing increasingly desperate orders. Regroup here, hold there. Advance, withdraw. Often within minutes of each other, units reported conflicting instructions. Some obeyed one order, only to discover neighboring units had received a different one. Radio traffic became congested. Clarity vanished. Meanwhile, Patton's headquarters remained focused on one thing: momentum. As long as American forces kept moving, the Germans would never regain balance. Inside the Panthers, morale shifted. These crews had trained for decisive armored battles, not this slow, exhausting uncertainty. They waited under camouflage for battles that never came. They moved at night, unsure of what lay ahead. They conserved fuel like a lifeline. Some crews abandoned vehicles not because they were damaged, but because staying meant capture. Others destroyed their tanks to prevent them from falling into enemy hands. The most advanced tanks Germany had produced were being removed from the war without ever delivering the blow they were built for. Germany had bet everything on equipment. Patton had bet on speed, flexibility, and initiative. The Panthers represented tactical excellence. Patton represented operational dominance. The battlefield no longer rewarded the strongest machine. It rewarded the fastest decision, and Germany was losing that race. As reports filtered back, a staggering reality emerged. Of the 58 Panthers committed to stop Patton, many were immobilized, many abandoned, several destroyed without direct tank combat. Only a fraction remained operational. The mission, to halt Patton, had failed, and the American advance continued. German High Command now faced a devastating truth. If 58 Panthers could not slow Patton, what could? And as Patton's forces pushed ever closer to Germany itself, the answer became terrifyingly clear. There was nothing left to stop him. By the third week of September 1944, the reality could no longer be ignored. Germany's final armored initiative had not gone as planned. The 113th Panzer Brigade, once a symbol of advanced engineering and renewed operational hope, had lost its ability to function effectively. Not due to a single overwhelming confrontation, but because it had been gradually outmaneuvered by speed, coordination, and constant pressure. Patton had not engaged the Panthers directly. He had rendered them operationally irrelevant. As American forces advanced eastward, the remaining Panther units were dispersed across villages, forests, and narrow roads. Many were intact but unable to be utilized efficiently. Some remained concealed under camouflage, engines idle, crews awaiting instructions that never came. Fuel supplies dwindled. Communication with higher command became inconsistent. Spare parts were unavailable. Some crews tried to reorganize only to find American units had already occupied key routes. Others attempted relocation at night, leaving vehicles that could not continue. One German officer later remarked, "We were not neutralized in a single engagement. We were overtaken by the pace of events." It was a quiet reflection, yet entirely accurate. While the Panther units faced logistical challenges, Patton's Third Army pressed on. Temporary supply issues slowed progress slightly, but not enough to allow German forces room to adjust. Even as fuel ran low, reconnaissance teams moved forward, maintaining momentum and ensuring the opposition could not reset or anticipate movements. Patton's approach was simple. Never allow the opposing forces time to reorganize. Never allow them clarity on your next move. Never give them a chance to anticipate operational directions. The situation on the ground remained skewed, strategically in favor of the advancing Americans. Eventually, German command requested a status report on the Panther units. The findings were revealing. Out of 58 Panther vehicles dispatched west to manage the American advance, several were left unused due to fuel and logistical limitations. A number experienced mechanical or terrain-related operational issues. Others were temporarily detained or bypassed without engagement. A small number became non-operational during minor maneuvers. Only 8 Panther vehicles managed to reposition and remain functionally active. 8. Insufficient to form a cohesive line. Insufficient to influence operational outcomes. Insufficient to alter the overall course of movement. The trump card had lost its operational relevance. Patton's forces continued forward with calculated determination. Supply limitations required careful management, yet did not halt momentum. The enemy was unable to regain cohesion or anticipate the unfolding operational tempo. Every maneuver reinforced the American advantage. German planners were constantly adjusting, but the pace of events and the strategic positioning of Patton's Third Army meant their efforts were consistently reactive rather than proactive. By the end of the third week, it was clear that the Panzer Brigade, despite its technical sophistication, could no longer influence the advancing operations in any meaningful way. The success of the American advance rested not on isolated engagements, but on consistent forward momentum, efficient logistics, and the ability to remain unpredictable. Operational control had shifted decisively. In this context, the 113th Panther Brigade's initial deployment, while ambitious, ultimately could not shape the outcome. Patton's method, maintaining initiative, speed, and operational flexibility, ensured the brigade's presence was strategically irrelevant. The lessons of this movement would be noted in after-action assessments, emphasizing that coordination, timing, and resource management could outweigh